So gardens are really important habitat, and that's one of the reasons why it's fantastic to have an entomological garden at Chelsea. To be there in that space where people are celebrating gardens and horticulture and pointing out that insects are part of gardens, that gardens are an extremely important habitat for many, many insects. Studies on wild bumblebees have shown that if you measure the density of wild colonies in a landscape, one of the things that really is important to raise the density of colonies is the proportion of gardens in the surrounding landscape.
So the garden at the show is going to be a really great way to really kind of celebrate insect science and champion that we as humans are really important to insects. So in the middle of the garden is this huge steel lab that's inspired by a compound insect eye. In the centre of that space is a screen that will allow us to show insects at huge magnified scale. And all around the garden are all sorts of habitats specifically designed to attract and appeal to insects.
So obviously there's a lot of emphasis on everywhere where there's insects, but in urban locations it's vitally important. We're undergoing a real climate and biodiversity crisis, and we just don't know enough about insects, and the insect science that goes behind that is really trying to make sure that we do understand, and therefore we can look after the planet's food security, protect people from disease, but also make sure that ecosystems thrive and flourish. So it's really important to have that understanding.
So I think people coming to the show, might potentially be quite shocked to hear that we're celebrating brownfield sites and we're using construction waste and we're having dead wood all throughout the garden. But part of the way we're going to kind of appeal to people and get them excited is by organising and orchestrating these materials in quite designed ways. So things from dead wood habitat panels, palisade walls, gabions filled with rubble and crushed concrete, a real mix of materials, a mix of topography that really creates this incredible insect-rich habitat.
So inevitably, because of when the Chelsea Flower Show is on, the pollinators will be out in force hopefully, so we would hope to find maybe some solitary species or some other things that will come in on the plants, and it's a case of waiting and seeing what we find.
So on the garden we're going to have lots of plants that many people might consider as weeds. So dandelions are a really good source of nectar for all sorts of species of insects. And they are actually like a really interesting plant. They go from seed to flower in about 10 days. And they also, I personally think they look quite pretty, the kind of yellow specks of flowers that you see really early in the year. So we're gonna really embrace plants that people might consider as weeds and maybe try to change people's perceptions. These plants can be aesthetic, they can be beautiful, they're also really beneficial, and we should really celebrate them.
What we've done is we've tried to grow as wide a range as possible of plants for insect life and for insect feed. In the last few years, I think, and it's becoming more and more so, slightly imperfect plants and shows needs to be the way forward. In your garden setting, you're going to have plants, if you're encouraging insects and birds into the garden, you're going to have the odd nibbles because it is after all food for them. And I think we need to make sure that moving forward that this is acceptable. You don't want plants completely obliterated, of course, but I think there needs to be a happy mix where a few nibbles here and there is not the end of the world.
We are really looking forward to engaging with the public, to making sure that we can really inspire people to take an interest in insects and to know all about the different types of insects and what they do. So the garden after Chelsea is going to the IQL in Stratford, and we are really excited by this because Chelsea will open the door to many people coming to visit the garden, but relocating will mean that we can take the garden and work with schools, educational groups. We can let the general public come in and investigate and get really into the garden and explore, and hopefully we can inspire the next generation of entomologists and insect scientists to take this all forward and be the future.
So the garden, when it moves to Stratford, will become this resource for the RES to host events, to host workshops, to have school trips, to really be open to the public and accessible, and showcase that these types of gardens are really important to insects, and we should all be starting to think about ways we can incorporate habitat and we can try to halt the insect decline.